Okay, so you own an offshore oil rig, a steel city floating over a mile of water, one of the largest machines humans build, pulling hydrocarbons out of the seabed. When it's working, it prints money at rates that sound made up. When it isn't, it becomes the most expensive object you have ever been unable to get rid of. And that last part is the thing nobody warns you about, because the defining misery of rig ownership isn't the storms or the oil price. It's that you can't put it down. By the end of this, you'll understand why an idle rig eats you alive, why your crew is a problem money can't fully solve, and why the single largest bill of your entire ownership arrives at the end, when the rig has stopped earning anything at all. Let's start with the cruelest structural fact of this business. A rig costs enormous money simply to exist, not to drill, to exist. A large deep water rig burns through tens of millions of dollars a year just sitting in the water, maintained, crewed, insured, and certified, producing nothing. Crew wages, helicopter transport, supply vessels, insurance running a few percent of the vessel's value annually, and an endless parade of certifications and inspections. There is no pause button. You cannot park a rig in a garage and stop paying for it, because a rig left genuinely unattended in a marine environment corrodes, degrades, and becomes both a hazard and a total loss. Saltwater attacks steel continuously, and the structural integrity that keeps a platform standing depends on maintenance that cannot lapse. Corrosion is not a cosmetic issue on an offshore structure. It is the slow mechanism by which an asset becomes a fatality risk. Regulators know this, which is why even a stacked, non-producing rig remains subject to inspection regimes you must pay to satisfy. So the entire business hinges on one thing: having a contract. A rig without a contract is not an asset. It's a hole in the ocean you pour money into. And here's the trap. When the oil market turns, contracts evaporate exactly when everyone's rigs go idle simultaneously, meaning you're competing to place a rig into a market that doesn't want any. Rigs sit for months, then years, and the accumulated cost of keeping them alive eventually exceeds what they're worth. This is not a theoretical risk. Transocean, one of the largest rig owners on Earth, sold 4 ultra-deepwater drill ships in 2025 that had been built between 2009 and 2011 and idle for 5 to 9 years, and recorded a loss of about $1.9 billion on the sale. Those weren't bad rigs. They were good rigs that nobody needed, whose upkeep quietly consumed their value until giving them away was cheaper than keeping them. That's the lesson that governs the whole industry. And it's why buying a distressed rig cheaply at a post-bankruptcy auction is so often a trap. A rig bought for a fraction of its build cost still carries the full running cost of a rig. 1 year without a contract can consume the entire discount you thought you'd captured. And by the second year, you're worse off than someone who paid full price and put it straight to work. Now let's talk about the part of rig ownership that never appears in a spreadsheet: the people. You need somewhere between 100 and 200 workers on a large rig at any moment, living on it for 2 to 4 week rotations. They're in the middle of an ocean, hundreds of miles from land, in a workplace where a helicopter is the only way home. The work is physically punishing and genuinely dangerous, and that isolation carries a real human cost. Workers are separated from families for weeks at a stretch, live and sleep in cramped quarters alongside the same colleagues they work with, and have nowhere to go when things get tense. Fatigue, isolation, and confinement are documented occupational realities of offshore life, which is exactly why the pay is high, starting around $100,000 a year and climbing to $500,000 for senior engineers. Getting those people on and off the platform is itself a major recurring expense, with a single helicopter flight costing somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000, and the flights never stop. Crew changes, inspectors, spare parts, management. Supply vessels bringing food, water, fuel, and equipment rent for tens of thousands of dollars a day. A rig is a settlement that must be resupplied by air and sea indefinitely. But money only solves so much. Skilled offshore personnel are scarce, and when the industry cycles down and lays people off, many never return. They retrain and take onshore work where they see their families. Then, when demand recovers, owners find themselves competing for a shrunken pool of experienced hands. So you're perpetually managing a workforce that's expensive when you have it, impossible to replace quickly when you lose it, and whose well-being is a life safety issue rather than an HR nicety, because a fatigued, distracted crew on a rig is how catastrophes begin. And the catastrophes are the reason every regulation exists. Piper Alpha in 1988 began with routine maintenance, a gas leak and a spark, and within hours the largest platform in the North Sea was destroyed, killing 167 people. The Alexander L. Kielland capsized in Norwegian waters in 1980 after a leg failed, traced to a small crack in a weld left during construction that went unnoticed for years, and 123 people died. Deepwater Horizon in 2010 destroyed a $500 million platform and produced a liability bill that ultimately reached tens of billions of dollars across fines, cleanup, and lawsuits. Sit with the scale of that last number because it defines your risk as an owner. A single failure can generate liabilities that exceed the value of your entire company. No other equipment owner in ordinary commerce carries that shape of exposure. That's why the regulatory burden is so heavy, and why compliance is a permanent operating cost rather than a one-time hurdle. Classification societies, annual inspections, environmental audits, safety case documentation, endless paperwork, all costing millions a year, all mandatory, all producing zero revenue. And it never gets lighter. Every disaster in the industry's history has added another layer of requirements that you now pay to satisfy forever. And insurance behaves the same way. Rates are set not only by your own safety record, but by the industry's. So an accident on someone else's platform or a storm season in your region raises your premiums regardless of how well you run your operation. You are financially exposed to other people's failures in a way few asset owners ever experience. Now, here's the part that genuinely separates rig ownership from every other expensive asset, and it's the one almost nobody outside the industry knows about: decommissioning. When a platform reaches the end of its productive life, you don't sell it or abandon it. You are legally required to dismantle it. That means plugging every well, cleaning and often removing pipelines, stripping out production equipment, and removing the structure itself, then restoring the seabed. And it is spectacularly expensive. Large structures can cost hundreds of millions of dollars to dismantle. Globally, the projected cost of decommissioning offshore infrastructure runs to roughly $210 billion, with around 2,600 structures expected to need removal by 2040. Australia alone, a modest producer, faces an estimated liability of tens of billions of dollars, stretching to 2070. Think about what that means for an owner. Every barrel you produce is quietly accruing an obligation to spend an enormous sum at the end, on work that generates no revenue whatsoever. Your rig is not just an asset that depreciates. It's an asset with a mandatory, colossal disposal bill attached. And the deeper the water, the higher that bill climbs. Newer platforms in deeper water face steeper decommissioning costs, precisely because they're harder to remove. The physical scale of the work is hard to overstate. Australia's estimate alone involves removing at least 2.7 million tons of infrastructure from the seabed. And this liability has become the industry's great unresolved mess. In the United States, the Government Accountability Office found that as of June 2023, more than 2,700 wells and 500 platforms in the Gulf of Mexico were overdue for decommissioning, against total estimated decommissioning costs somewhere between $40 and $70 billion. while the Interior Department held only around $3.5 billion in bonds to cover it. The gap is enormous, and it exists because operators go bankrupt before paying. When they do, regulators pursue previous owners, meaning a company that sold a platform years ago can find itself dragged back and held responsible for cleaning it up. Legal experts advising the industry now tell operators to assume they could be left holding a massive liability for assets they thought they disposed of long ago. Off the California coast, platforms abandoned by their last owner have become the subject of exactly this fight, with companies arguing it isn't their job and the state paying roughly $1 million a month just to maintain a non-producing platform while the question drags on. So understand the full trap. You buy a rig. It costs tens of millions annually to keep alive whether or not it works. Its income depends on contracts controlled by oil majors, priced by day rates that have swung from $650,000 a day down to $150,000 within a couple of years, driven by oil prices, OPEC decisions, and geopolitics you have zero influence over. You crew it with scarce workers whose isolation is both a human cost and a safety variable. You carry catastrophic liability where one accident can dwarf your company's value. You pay millions annually in compliance forever. And at the end of all of it, you owe a decommissioning bill in the hundreds of millions that may follow you even after you've sold the thing. That's why owning an offshore rig sucks. Not because it can't make money. In a good market with a signed day rate, it makes staggering amounts. It's that you own an object you cannot stop feeding, cannot easily sell, cannot legally abandon, and cannot ultimately escape. The oil majors understood this perfectly, which is why Shell, Exxon, BP, and Chevron overwhelmingly don't own the rigs they drill with. They lease them, use them for the project, and hand every one of these problems back to the owner the moment the contract ends. That's the whole game. Somebody has to hold the steel, absorb the idle years, employ the crew, carry the liability, and eventually pay to cut it apart and haul it away. The people who make the reliable money made sure it wasn't them. If you own the rig, it's you.